Okay, thank you everybody for joining. Let me know that you can hear me and see me okay, and we will get started. As I mentioned, obviously at the top, we are in day 2 of jury deliberation. The jury has just announced that they do have a verdict, so a verdict is in. At this point, we have about a few minutes, I'd say 20 minutes at this point before we actually hear the verdict read aloud, so that we're clear. Regardless of what the verdict is, a sentence wouldn't be announced right away. If Donald Trump is convicted, he wouldn't be sentenced immediately. It would take a couple of weeks. It takes a couple of weeks in New York for them to generate a pre-sentencing report and for Judge Merchan to actually hand down a sentence. So we would be waiting a couple of weeks anyway in the event that Donald Trump is convicted for any sentence to be handed down. So we do have a little bit of time, as I mentioned before. As of about 5 minutes ago, we have 30 minutes. So the jurors had asked for 30 minutes to fill out a form. Stating the obvious right at the top, it is good news for prosecutors that it didn't even take 2 days to reach a verdict. That is usually indicative of a conviction. So, obviously don't want to get out ahead of my skis here and say something that I'm unsure of, but generally what we're looking at in the event of a quick verdict like we have today is that, we're more likely to see a conviction. Let me see if, unfortunately, Glenn is on the road. I would love to bring Glenn in. I'm trying to bring Glenn in, but Glenn is on the road right now. So Glenn and I will do a full rundown later this afternoon of everything that happened today. But sadly, you're stuck with me here. But we'll do a full rundown regardless, so that you can stay on top of everything that's happening. With Glenn's expertise built in. So let's see. Oh, I'm hearing now that was about 8 minutes ago that they sent. Oh, was it about 28 minutes ago that they sent the note? Let's find out exactly when that note was sent, saying that they needed 30 minutes. Well, in any case, we may be 10, 20 minutes away. Stick here because we're going to have that verdict as soon as they come in. with that said, if you have any questions, throw them in the comments right now, and I'll do my best to answer those questions right here. But for those just joining, again, we do have a verdict. The jury just asked for a few minutes to fill out a form. So at this point, we are waiting on the jury to come back in. And as soon as we have any news, whether Donald Trump is convicted or if he's found not guilty, I'll be able to tell you as soon as it happens. So the note that was sent to Judge Merchan said, "We, the jury, have a verdict. We would like an extra 30 minutes to fill out the forms if that be possible." So that's where we're at right now. Again, we are on the brink of history here. I mean, Donald Trump will be the first former president of the United States to either be convicted or absolved of a conviction here in this trial. So we are witnessing history that's going to happen in the next 30 minutes. So if you're watching right now, stick around because this is big news. For those asking what I think, took less than 2 days for the jury to reach a verdict. That generally points to the fact that, with outcomes like this, it generally points to good news for prosecutors who are looking to secure a conviction. Glenn has even said in previous episodes of the Legal Breakdown, we can expect 1 day of deliberation per week of the trial. I believe this trial went on for 5 weeks or so we could have expected as many as 5 days of deliberation. It ended up being about 1.5. So again, this is a pretty quick verdict, and that would point to this idea that Donald Trump has been found guilty. Again, he's facing 34 felony charges. I know that he likes to pretend that he doesn't know what the crime is and that nobody told him what the crime is. And, the prosecutors haven't even landed on something. That's a lie. He's facing 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to hush money payouts for an affair he had while his wife was at home with their infant son. That's what we're dealing with right now. So for those who are watching, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sticking around. We are waiting just a few more minutes. I know there's thousands of people joining every minute here. We are waiting just a few minutes for the jury to finish filling out forms, and as soon as we have a verdict, we'll go ahead and read it. Fox right now has some of their own legal pundits saying, like Andrew McCarthy, for example, says, "I don't think it's good for the president. I hope I'm wrong." Obviously, that's for their president, Donald Trump. But right now we are waiting. Again, for those who are asking what I think, this is a very quick verdict, 1.5 days. Didn't even take 2 full days. And now we wait to see what that verdict is going to be. If you have questions in the meantime, throw them in the chat. And to be able to participate in the chat, just subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything, but this way you can throw questions in the chat. And there are a lot of comments happening, so I'm going to do my best to keep up with all of them and answer them as quickly as I can. Do I think the judge could include gag order violations after the first 10? I'm not sure what that means. Do you mean like as a charge here? I don't think that gag order violations are going to factor into any of this. At this point, the trial is over. So, I think that's not really an issue that they're focused on too heavily. I think the point here was just to get to the end of this trial, and that's what they did. For those asking right now, I know a lot of people are joining very quickly. We are waiting for the jury to come into the jury room, but the jury does have a verdict. We just don't know what it is yet. They're filling out forms right now. They should be in just a few minutes, and then we will have an answer as to whether Donald Trump has been found guilty or not guilty. Again, he's on trial for 34 felony counts related to falsifying business records for his hush money payouts intended to hide an affair from the American people while he was running for president. We should have about 10-15 minutes max before the jury comes back into the room. So if you're here right now, stick around. This is things are getting moving along pretty quickly here. Do I feel Trump is guilty based on the speed with which the jury came back with a verdict? Yes. Can a guilty verdict get kicked into an appeal? Yeah, of course. The Trump team can appeal it, but that doesn't mean that he won't still be sentenced. That he won't be sentenced in this initial trial. Everybody has the right to an appeal, but it's not going to have any impact on Donald Trump being sentenced if he is convicted. Does each count add a 4-year sentence, or are they consecutive? It's up to the judge's discretion. So again, this today will be different from the actual sentencing. There will be a pre-sentence report generated where they take into account a bunch of information about Donald Trump's past and what the crimes are. And I think that they'll give guidelines to Judge Merchan in terms of what a crime like this would generally warrant in terms of sentencing. But it's going to be up to his discretion at the end of the day. He could be facing jail time. He could be facing prison time. Jail time. He can be facing probation, for example. It's completely up to Judge Merchan. Okay, a lot of questions happening. I'm going to try to... Could a hung jury happen this quickly? Anything could happen. Yeah, I mean, we don't know what's happening inside the jury room. Yes, to answer your question, a hung jury could happen this quickly. Is it likely that a hung jury would happen this quickly? Usually, if they're having issues coming to some type of agreement, some type of unanimous agreement, the judge will go in. I believe it's called an Allen charge, where the court gives instructions to the jurors to like give it another try. It's called an Allen charge, and it's basically insisting that the jurors give it another attempt if they're deadlocked to really figure out what they're doing and to come forward with some type of a solution here, to listen to other members of the jury. I don't believe that he's even given an Allen charge, which would suggest that there wasn't a hung jury. So that's just me reading from the tea leaves here. After the verdict, can Trump say whatever he wants now? Yeah, I mean, Trump will no longer be a criminal defendant. He will either be absolved, or he will be, well, I shouldn't say absolved, found not guilty, or he'll be a convicted felon. So I believe he can say what he wants, and that he will no longer be bound by the rules of the gag order. I believe then it's just sentencing. And if Donald Trump is found guilty and he wants to really lean in just in advance of him being sentenced by the judge, I mean, that's one strategy that you can take, but I don't know if that's going to redound to his benefit. So something tells me if Donald Trump is convicted, the last thing he's going to want to do is really get under the skin of the judge who will be about to sentence him. Can he be taken straight to jail after the verdict? I do not presume that he will be taken to jail. I think with white-collar criminals, those in power, that's generally not the case, but I believe it's going to be up to Judge Merchan's discretion what we see here. And this is in the event of a guilty verdict. Just checking right now. Donald Trump is in the courtroom. He's awaiting the verdict that will be read around 5 p.m. Eastern, so that's about 3 to 5 minutes from now. His arms are apparently very tightly crossed, stone-faced, nodding as his attorney Todd Blanche whispered into his ear. So we are past this 30-minute time period where we're waiting for the jury to fill out some forms. And now we wait charges being read on those 34 felony counts. So as soon as the jury comes into the room, I will let you know. Just give me one quick second here so that I can make sure to get all info for you. I want to be able to read your questions and follow the news at the same time. So just changing my screen up a little bit. Okay. Anyway, back to your questions now. I apologize if I haven't gotten to all of them, but you can throw questions in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. One question, very important, can they lock him up like a dog? That was one of the questions I got. I believe if you ask Donald Trump, that is the only way someone can be locked up, like a dog. If he's somehow acquitted, God forbid, how will this affect the election? That's the question I got. I think Donald Trump will try to use that to his benefit. And he'll claim that, if he's found not guilty, he'll claim that he was absolved, that he didn't do it, that it was a political prosecution that came from Joe Biden. I think ultimately, it'll help. It can't hurt him if he's found not guilty. Do I think it's going to have a major impact one way or the other? Probably not if he's acquitted. I think it'll have more of an impact if he's convicted. I believe, according to the latest polling, about 16% of Americans have said that if Donald Trump is convicted, that'll have an impact on their willingness to vote for him. Someone said, will they do house arrest? That is a possibility in terms of sentencing. I mean, it's up to Judge Merchan's discretion. It would be a shame if they did house arrest, considering Donald Trump's house is a mansion beach resort at Mar-a-Lago. So, what he should face is the same punishment. If he's found guilty, is the same punishment as anybody else, which would be prison time. But again, that's going to be up to Judge Merchan. We won't find out anything about sentencing immediately. Peter Hamby is here. There are still additional charges Trump has to face. Does this verdict bring ramifications to later trials, whether he's convicted or acquitted? By later trials, do you mean the trial in D.C.? Do you mean the trial, Peter, do you mean the trial in D.C. And Florida? I think this would normally have no impact on any other trials. Whether he's found guilty here or found not guilty is not going to have any impact on any other pending prosecutions that he's contending with. Although, honestly speaking, I don't think that he'll be going to trial before the election in the D.C. case. Certainly not Florida, if Judge Cannon has anything to do with it. And, we have a sprawling RICO case down in Fulton County, Georgia. So unlikely that we'll see him go to trial in that case before the election either. Will he have access to his bronzing tanning cream in jail, or will they give him something with stripes? Something tells me that Donald Trump won't have his products. And I also don't know that he'll have access to to the temperature in there. And we know how delicate he can be in terms of the temperature. Judge Merchan has taken the bench. So for those watching right now, stick around. Things are happening very quickly. The jury does have a verdict. Judge Merchan has taken the bench. He's asked to bring out the jury. Now we are waiting for the jury to enter the room. Big moment. This is a big moment. This is the first time in the history of this country that a former president may very well be convicted of felony counts in court, in federal court. Well, state court. We are waiting right now on the jury to enter the courtroom. The jury does have a verdict. For those watching right now, the verdict is in. We are waiting on the jury to enter the courtroom. For those watching, by the way, if you want to support this channel, follow along with this stuff, Glenn and I will be doing comprehensive coverage later on today. Please subscribe to this channel if you're not yet subscribed. Man, this is quite the high-stakes moment where we're waiting for the jury to enter the courtroom. Hearts are just pounding here, but I have a feeling a lot of people are going to remember what they were doing right now. For those just joining, the jury is entering the courtroom right now. There is a verdict. This is me desperately refreshing to make sure that the second we have news, damn, silence is deafening in here, huh? For those just joining, I am waiting along with you for the verdict. Judge Merchan has taken the bench, called for the jury to be brought back into the courtroom. And now we wait. Anybody else's heart's pounding a little bit? I don't know if it's more excitement or nausea. Jury has entered the courtroom. According to Adam Klasfeld, who's an MSNBC contributor, little to no eye contact with defendant Trump. Again, you don't have to read too much into tea leaves, but always fun to just hear little tidbits and draw what you will from them. Jury finds the defendant guilty on the first count. So that's it. There are 34 counts. Donald Trump has been found guilty on the first count. Wow. 34 counts, 33 remain. Trump found guilty on the first count. He is now officially a convicted felon. Man. Wow. Here we go. Count 2, guilty. Count 3, guilty. Count 4, guilty. Count 5, guilty. Count 6, guilty. Count 7, guilty. Count 8, guilty. Count 9, guilty. Count 10, guilty. This is from Adam Klasfeld, MSNBC legal analyst. "34 counts in total. Wow. What was I up to? 10. Count 11, guilty. Count 12, guilty. Count 13, guilty. Count 14, guilty. Count 15, guilty. Count 16, guilty. Count 17, guilty. Count 18, guilty. Count 19, guilty. Count 20, guilty. Count 21, guilty. Count 22, guilty. Count 23, guilty. Count 24, guilty. Count 25, guilty. Count 26, guilty. Count 27, guilty. Count 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, guilty. Donald Trump has been found guilty of all 34 counts that he was facing. He is a convicted felon, found guilty on all counts. This is history happening right now. The first time in American history that a former president was convicted of felony counts, convicted of all 34 felony counts related to falsifying business records for the 2016 hush money payout to Stormy Daniels for an affair he had while his wife was at home with their infant son. Donald Trump brought out every excuse he could think of to try and undermine this case. He attacked the judge. He attacked the judge's family. He attacked prosecutors. He attacked witnesses. He pushed for his gag order to be undermined so that he could land himself in prison because he thought it would redound to his benefit. None of it worked. He claimed that he didn't know what the charges were that he was facing. Well, he knows what the charges are now because he was found guilty on all 34 of them. This must have been an eye-opening experience right now for Donald Trump to not only learn what the charges he was facing were, but to find that he was guilty on all 34 of them. Wow. Okay. A really incredible moment. I know a lot of you follow along with our legal breakdown series. I know it was hard to hear the lead up to this because it takes so long to get any type of, any of what feels like any type of accountability. Well, we just got it here. I mean, this is a huge move, a historic move that we're witnessing right now. Donald Trump is now a convicted felon found guilty on all 34 counts by a New York jury. This case was brought by District Attorney Alvin Bragg, not by Joe Biden. Despite the fact that Donald Trump loves to claim that this is a political prosecution, you will hear from the right at this point that Trump convicted Donald Trump. Biden convicted Donald Trump. Joe Biden didn't bring this prosecution forward. In fact, Joe Biden's DOJ had the opportunity to bring about a prosecution for this exact crime, opted not to. The DOJ passed on this. It was DA Alvin Bragg who brought this prosecution forward. And aside from that, you know and I know, Donald Trump is a grown-ass man. Nobody forced him, certainly not Joe Biden, to have an affair with a porn star and then pay her off and then falsify business records to hide those payments, including getting Michael Cohen to take out money to do so and then making Michael Cohen whole, including paying his taxes and falsifying the business records to do so, which sent Michael Cohen to prison for this exact scheme. Nobody forced Donald Trump to do this. He is a grown man. He made the conscious decision to do this on his own. So if Donald Trump is looking for someone to blame here, it's not going to be Joe Biden. It's not going to be the Democrats. All he has to do is look in the mirror. And I'm saying this because I know that we are going to enter into a moment now where the right goes into overdrive by trying to claim that this was a political prosecution. Let me read a little bit of what's happening in the courtroom right now. Donald Trump remains largely expressionless. This was as the verdict was being read back. Trump did look over toward the jury as they each confirmed that this is, in fact, their verdict, too. That they had to confirm with each individual juror to make sure. Judge Merchan then said to the jury, "I want to thank you very much for your service in this case. It was a long time to be away from your jobs and your families, engaged in a very difficult task. I admire your dedication and hard work," he says. So this is it. This was a historic moment that we just lived through. Donald Trump, the first former president in the United States of America to be found guilty of a felony crime, 34 felony crimes in this case. Found guilty on all 34 counts. So important to note now that, as I mentioned before, according to the latest polling, 16% of Americans said that it would be disqualifying if Donald Trump was a convicted felon. Remember, we're seeing a lot of polling now, but most people who are paying attention to politics, most people who are, in this country right now are not paying attention to politics. When they tune back in, whether it's later this summer, whether it's in September or October, the first thing that they're going to find out is that Donald Trump, the Republican nominee for the president of the United States, is a convicted felon, and not just once, but 34 times over. They will also know what the sentence is going to be. So now what's going to happen is they'll generate a pre-sentencing report, and I believe it's going to take a few weeks or so in New York. I mean, everything's a little bit unprecedented here as it relates to Donald Trump, but it'll take a few weeks, and then we'll find out from Judge Merchan what the sentencing is. One last note. Thank you to people for keeping the faith. It is very, very easy to tune out. I know Republicans would love nothing better than for people to despair, to think that the justice system doesn't work, to think that the whole system is rigged against them, and so you might as well just throw your hands up and give up because nothing's going to change anyway, and Donald Trump is too powerful. This is the justice system working as it should, and I know that very often it doesn't. Very often it moves too slow, as is the case with Judge Cannon. We have corrupt judges, as is the case with the DC prosecution. We have a corrupt U.S. Supreme Court, as is the case with all of these prosecutions. They move too slowly. But this is a rare instance where all of that is the means to an end that actually works. And so, it is easy to throw your hands up and to kind of deride what I've been talking about on my channel, what I do with Glenn on a daily basis, where we try to keep everybody engaged and informed, and that we try to give everybody credible information, and try to make sure that you have a little bit of faith in the system. And this is one of those moments where it's kind of played out, and we see that the system is working as it should. And this is a year in which Donald Trump has lost, I believe, just about every court proceeding that he's engaged in, whether it's, E. Jean Carroll. I think the first sum that he lost was $5 million, followed by 300 and man, he's lost so much money. I can't even keep on top of everything. Somewhere in the ballpark of $500 million. Of course, he had to pay a $175 million bond, but that doesn't change the fact that he was still ordered to pay a sum of about $500 million. He's lost the fraud verdict. The fraud verdict was $500 million. The E. Jean Carroll was, I believe, $87 million. So he's in the hole over $500 million at this point. Now he's a convicted felon 34 times over. So this is the system working as it should. So thank you to people who are paying attention. There are a lot of you in this stream right now watching this. Thank you for having a little bit of faith in the system. And thanks for watching right now, because most people aren't checked in. And so use this opportunity to be a tribune for your people and let them know, if there's anybody on the fence that if being a convicted felon matters to anybody who might be on the fence, if you have independents, if you have soft Republicans in your lives, let them know. He just got found guilty by a jury of his peers. This wasn't Joe Biden. It wasn't any Democrats. It wasn't Eric Swalwell or anybody like that, Nancy Pelosi. This was a jury of New Yorkers where Donald Trump himself grew up. They had the facts of this case. So let people know what just happened. Thank you for paying attention. I will try to answer some questions now. So let me first see if there is any other information for what's happening in the courtroom. That's it. That's everything that's happened in the courtroom right now. Just to a brief summary of what we're looking at, and then I'll get to the questions. Guilty of 34 felonies, found liable for sexual assault, can't do business in New York. I believe his kids can't even run a charity. Tried to overturn an election, incited a violent mob at the Capitol, and still the Republican Party lines up behind him like lemmings. Can he appeal? Yes. The answer is yes, he can appeal. He will appeal, but that doesn't change the fact that he'll be sentenced prior to that. And the appeal could take years. I'll be speaking with Glenn Kirshner later on today about exactly that. But yes, he will be appealing this ruling. Will it have any impact on the sentencing? No. So he'll be sentenced completely independent of his ability to appeal and his here we go. Donald Trump will be sentenced on July 11th. So 5 weeks from now, which is what I said earlier. It's going to take a few weeks here. 5 weeks from now. So in this meantime, in this interim period, they'll generate a pre-sentencing report, and then it'll be up to Judge Merchan on July 11th to go ahead and sentence him. Do I think there's any chance he will go to prison as the result of a sentence? That is the $1 million question, isn't it? I don't know. I don't want to guess, because that and $10 is going to get you a foot long at Subway. So I don't want to guess, but I would say if it was anyone but Donald Trump, a prison sentence would absolutely be in the cards. Whether Judge Merchan goes more lenient on Donald Trump because he is a president, and there is reason to believe that he might do that, and this is just reading from the tea leaves, when he was in his gag order hearing, Judge Merchan said out loud that, I don't want to incarcerate you. You were the former president of the United States. You may very well be the next president of the United States. So that right there kind of betrayed a little bit of his thought process about this, that, that this is somebody who he doesn't necessarily have a strong desire to incarcerate. But with that said, maybe, basically Glenn and I have spoken about this issue on a recent episode of the Legal Breakdown. I said that I think it makes it more likely that he isn't incarcerated. Glenn said that he thinks it's more likely that he is incarcerated. So, I mean, it's anyone's guess, but if you want to, Glenn is the former prosecutor and I'm not. So if you want to take his advice, Glenn would probably say 75 cents on the dollar that Donald Trump will be locked up. Again, for those watching right now, if you want to hear Glenn's take on it, we will be doing a Legal Breakdown within the hour. So please make sure to subscribe to this channel. We will discuss everything. We'll discuss the issue of appeal. We'll discuss what the options are in terms of sentencing. If you have other questions that you want me to ask Glenn, drop them in the chat right now, and I'll do my best to answer those questions. This will be quite the interesting episode of the Legal Breakdown. Wow. I mean, like, sigh of relief on all of this. I think we're led so much to believe that this system isn't going to work, and there's so much pessimism, rightfully so. It's not like the system doesn't warrant it so often, but there's so much pessimism here about what could happen, and we see all of these corrupt judges. We see all of these broken court processes. We see all of these corrupt judges and the ways in which Donald Trump was able to intimidate members of the jury, intimidate family members of the judge, intimidate prosecutors and witnesses. And despite all of that, it took a day and a half, super quick verdict. Nothing was in doubt. We've been hit with a fire hose of disinformation from the right. Everything from the charges to who the judge is and who they're donating to. It's just been a fire hose of mis and disinformation, all to see that, there was a small degree of justice served. And remember, we're only halfway there. I don't know whether Donald Trump will be incarcerated at the end of this. I don't know if he'll be put on probation. I will say, here's what I would say. Keep your expectations low and allow what happens on July 11th to exceed them. But it's not our job right now to put all our hopes in the court system. It will always be our job at the end of the day to show up in November and make sure to vote, because Donald Trump can still run for president as a convicted felon. Even if he's in prison, he can still run for president and he can still win the presidency from prison. So it's not the court's job to take care of Donald Trump. It's not a prosecutor's job or a lawyer's job or a judge's job. It's our job at the end of the day to make sure that we show up, because that every Republican is going to weaponize what just happened here, which is the due administration of justice in a free and fair court proceeding, as some bogus evidence of a corrupt system, or as Joe Biden being corrupt. And that's not what it is. This is a jury of Donald Trump's peers in New York City who listened to the evidence and handed down the correct verdict. So, be on the lookout for the avalanche of disinformation that's going to be headed our way in the coming hours and days, weeks, and months. But just know, regardless of what Judge Merchan does, whether he puts him on probation, whether he puts him in jail, it's not going to matter. It's good that he is a convicted felon. For a lot of voters, that's going to mean something. And in an election where these things are won on the margins, that could be the difference between winning in a state like Georgia, in a state like Michigan, in a state like Wisconsin, in a state like Pennsylvania. These elections are a game of inches, not miles. And right now, having a guilty verdict here will move a few people. Is it going to be enough? Who knows? Is it going to help Donald Trump? Certainly not. Is it going to help Joe Biden? Absolutely. Knowing that Donald Trump is a convicted felon, knowing that the Republican nominee in the so-called party of law and order is a convicted felon, is that going to help Donald Trump? Absolutely not. There are people for whom this will matter. Whether it's on the margins, it is what it is. But it's our job at the end of the day to keep doing what we do, to keep making sure that people know what the stakes are in this election. Is it that a convicted felon is running for president? Sure. Absolutely. Is it also that guy would would sign a nationwide ban on abortion? Yeah. Or approve a nationwide abortion pregnancy registry, or make contraception illegal, or do what some states are trying to do, which is to ban interstate travel for reproductive care? Absolutely. I mean, the stakes are so much bigger than just what we're seeing right now. So this is a small part of it, but it's not the whole ballgame. The whole ballgame is, it's not what happened in this courtroom. It's not what happened in the past. It's what kind of country we want to live in moving forward. And that is a country where women have a right to bodily autonomy. It's a country where we have respect for the rule of law, where where we protect healthcare in this country, and on. All of these issues. And the difference couldn't be, more stark between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And this is just one more instance of that. Let's see if we have any other news from inside of the courtroom. Apparently, there is cheering that's happening outside of the courthouse, and you can hear that cheering on Fox News, which I'm sure they loved. Again, Judge Merchan's final words to the jury: I want you to know that I really admire your dedication, your hard work. You gave this matter the attention it deserved, and I want to thank you for that. Here's Donald Trump's remarks.
This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end, and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now, from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble, but this was a rigged decision right from day one, with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
So that's it. The usual complaining from Donald Trump, but he was right on one thing: that the real election, what matters here is going to happen on November 5th, and he is right about that. So that is Donald Trump doing the usual rigged, disgraceful, on and on. His whole raft of complaints there. As I mentioned before, for those who've missed it, July 11th will be sentencing. So what will happen in this interim period is there will be a pre-sentencing report that's going to be drawn up, and ultimately it'll be up to Judge Merchan to determine what the actual sentence is going to be. It could be incarceration, it could be probation, we could see house arrest, we could see, it's completely up to him. There is no mandatory sentence that has to be handed down here. So we will wait to see that. I will be hosting a legal breakdown shortly with Glenn, and Glenn and I will discuss everything that's going to happen at this point in terms of what's going to happen with an appeal, what Donald Trump's rights are as he awaits an appeal, what the spectrum is in terms of sentencing, and what specifically needs to happen in this period, and what happens if Donald Trump continues to attack the judge or violate the terms of a gag order, if he's even bound by the gag order at this point. So we're going to talk about all of that. And this was a great point that somebody just brought up. Isn't he still bound? Doesn't this violate his pretrial release agreement that he cannot commit a crime in any jurisdiction? So the crime already happened. Now he's being held accountable for the crime. what does violate Donald Trump's release order in the other prosecutions is the fact that he was found in criminal contempt for violating his gag order 10 times. So him being found guilty on 34 felony counts is not him committing a crime. It's him being held accountable for a crime. But he did commit a crime in the sense that that he was guilty of criminal contempt for violating his gag order 10 times. Will a judge in another jurisdiction do anything? We're waiting to see if Judge Cannon, no, of course not. Judge Chutkin, we're waiting for that case to even go back to her because the Supreme Court has it right now as they sit on their ruling for whether Donald Trump is bound by this idea of or protected by this idea of presidential immunity. And of course, then we have Judge McAfee in Fulton County, Georgia, which the case hasn't even started yet. So I don't anticipate anything happening there. So, he could be, but I think that the judges probably have to pick their battles. And this probably wouldn't be a battle that they would pick, even though they should. I do have a request. And if you've watched my videos, you know that I am allergic to self-promotion. I don't do any host-read ads or sponsorships or anything like that. But I've just written a book. It's called Shameless. It's available for pre-order right now. If you'd like to pre-order it, that would be an amazing way to support what I do. Again, I don't do ads in my channel. I don't do sponsorships or anything like that. But really proud of the book that I wrote. And so I will put a link to that in the post description. In the comments here, or you can go to briantylercohen.com/book to pre-order. It's called Shameless. Again, would very much appreciate if you would pre-order the book. The book doesn't come out for a couple of months, but pre-orders are important in terms of making sure the publisher prints enough books for the run, and it also goes toward the New York Times bestseller list, which is a bit of a goal of mine. So I'll put the link right here in the comments, and I will pin it. And if you would like to pre-order that book, that would be a huge help to me. And there are so many comments that I can't even find the link so that I could pin it. So let me try it again. Okay. Here we go. Pin message. Okay, so you should be able to see that pinned message in the comments. And again, if you haven't yet pre-ordered the book, I would definitely appreciate if you would pre-order it. That would really help me, and that's a great way to support what I do. Okay, with that said, let me answer some questions right now. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. If you're asking a question that I can't answer, then I'll make sure that Glenn answers it when we have our episode of the Legal Breakdown later on today. Okay. Can he get punished before appealing? Yes. The sentence will be handed down before Trump has the ability to appeal. Yes, he'll be able to appeal, and yes, he will appeal, but Donald Trump will be sentenced, and that sentence will apply to him regardless of whether he appeals or not. It's assumed that every defendant is going to appeal, and he has that right to appeal. So, for those wondering where Glenn is, I believe Glenn is on MSNBC right now. So that's where Glenn is. But we will be doing Legal Breakdown later on today. For those asking, yes, it will be on Audible. You can follow the link that I pinned for my book, and it is on Audible. I'm actually recording the audio version of the book this weekend. Okay, throw your questions in there. I'll do my best to answer them. Is he disqualified from running because he's a convicted felon? No. There is no federal prohibition against running for office if you're a convicted felon. Donald Trump could be in prison and still be eligible to be president. So when I say that, the ultimate test is going to be on November 5th, the ultimate test is going to be on November 5th because nothing is stopping him from running for president or from being elected as president in these cases. He could be found guilty of 999 criminal charges. It doesn't matter. He can still run for president. There's no federal prohibition. 35 years old, American citizen, and what should be no inciting of an insurrection or aiding or giving aid or comfort to those who incite an insurrection. But because of the Supreme Court, that's no longer a prohibiting factor. Yeah. Someone should also check on Samuel Alito's flag. That's a good call from Jeffrey. We have to see which way Samuel Alito's flag is flying right now. For those asking, why can he still run for president? Because the Constitution only prohibits you from running for president if you're under 35 years old, if you're not an American-born citizen, and if you've incited or given aid or comfort to those who've engaged in insurrection. The Supreme Court has litigated that last issue, and they've decided that that no longer applies. But just because you're a convicted felon doesn't prohibit you from being able to run for president. Here's where we get into the good stuff. Something more for Glenn, probably, but if he becomes president, can he pardon himself of this crime? He will try. He will absolutely try, and then it becomes an issue that the courts have to litigate. Technically, he shouldn't be able to because you can't be a judge and jury in your own case, and the Constitution is clear about that. But then again, this is a 6-3 conservative court that Trump is appointed a third of, and Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito are even farther right than the judges who Trump himself appointed. So, everything is subjective now. We live in a world where you have quote-unquote originalists who aren't adhering to the actual plain text of the Constitution, and you have, the communist Marxist Democrats who actually want the Constitution to be read as is, and the Republicans refuse to do so. Did I feel that Trump would be found guilty on all counts? Well, now that it's happened, I'm very comfortable saying yes. I knew this would happen all along. And if anybody says that I didn't, they're lying. I was 100% confident. And that's that. That's my story. When is sentencing? July 11th. Sentencing is on July 11th. So 5 weeks from now, a little over 5 weeks from now. Can the immunity verdict affect this? The immunity verdict shouldn't affect this because these happened before Donald Trump was president. So these crimes were committed before Trump was president. Remember, Trump was a candidate when this was happening. So presidential immunity only pertains to, first of all, it's a bogus notion that presidents have carte blanche to commit criminal activity. You're protected in terms of carrying out the duties of your office. Committing felonies is not part of the oath of office if you're the president. So this bogus notion of presidential immunity is already false on its face. But second of all, this was committed while Donald Trump was a candidate. He was trying to secrete damaging information from the American people in 2016 before he actually became president. So this should have no bearing on the conviction here. Yes, he will be sentenced after the June debate. So the June debate, I believe, is June 27th. Trump will be sentenced on July 11th. I was asked, Liberal Tears Coming, which is the show I do with Tommy Vitor over at Pod Save America, presidents who've been convicted of felonies. Shortest episode yet. 1. Can Trump personally attack the judge as corrupt and conflicted? Can he be penalized for that? Can Trump be fined a large amount? No, Trump was allowed to attack the judge. That wasn't part of the gag order. Judges are generally loath to include themselves in gag orders because you should still, they perceive defendants as still have, it's not going to impact. The judge knows that the defendant talking shit about them is not going to have any impact on the case, but it's when defendants attack witnesses that makes them less likely to testify, or when they intimidate members of the jury, that makes them less likely to want to vote to convict them if they find that they're guilty. That's where the judge draws the line. But a judge knows that even if a criminal defendant tries to attack them, that it's not going to have any bearing on their ability to preside over the case. So the judge usually doesn't include themselves in a gag order. So the fact that Trump attacked the judge, he's not going to be penalized for that. He's not going to be fined for that. In fact, it's not even a violation of the gag order. Why isn't sentencing immediate? Isn't it like that for murderers and other crimes? No, I believe that there's always a pre-sentencing report. In federal crimes, it can be 30 to 90 days. Right now in New York, we're looking at about a 5.5 week window from right now until Donald Trump is sentenced. So it's a much shorter window here that we're looking at. But no, even in federal criminal cases, it can be up to 3 months before the sentence is actually handed down. Do I think Biden is going to mention the conviction during the debate in June? I don't think so. I don't think Biden will because I don't think Biden will because I think he probably thinks he doesn't want to lend credence to this Republican talking point that he was responsible for bringing this prosecution forward. And so Joe Biden has this entire time stayed away from it. What do I think he should do? I think he should bring it up because Republicans are going to claim that Joe Biden was involved regardless. They're going to say to their audience that this was a criminal prosecution brought by Joe Biden regardless. So you might as well derive some benefit from it and bring it up and say, look, it's either me, who's worked for you, who will make sure to protect abortion rights, who's brought down the cost of insulin to $35, who's eliminated junk fees at banks, who has eliminated cancellation fees and change fees on airlines, who's added 15 million jobs, including 800,000 manufacturing jobs, who's delivered rural broadband even to disproportionately red states, who has given the most climate funding in the history of the world, who's passed the PACT Act for veteran health care, the CHIPS Act to reshore the entire massive swaths of the manufacturing industry. I mean, on and on. Or you can vote for the guy next to me who was found liable for sexual assault and defamation and fraud and is a convicted felon awaiting sentencing in a sentencing hearing that's going to happen in a week and a half from now. I think that would be a good thing for him to do. Will he do it? Probably not, because he's danced around this issue quite delicately. Again, not to give the appearance of impropriety or his involvement, but again, he's going to get beat up by Republicans as if he was involved anyway, so you might as well just derive some benefit regardless. Is the judge likely to order Trump into custody before sentencing as a flight risk? I don't think so. I think if the guy's running for president of the United States, he's probably not going to flee the country. Not sure how many electoral votes you can find in like Cancun, but probably not as many as you need in Michigan or Nevada or Wisconsin. So, also, I think he is banking on not getting locked up. I think he's banking on probation. He's banking on some type of fine. But remember, we don't know what's going to happen right now. We don't know whether he's going to be incarcerated. We don't know whether he's going to be put on probation or on house arrest. That all remains to be seen. So we do have 5 weeks. And so I hope for those watching right now, if you're not yet subscribed to this channel and you want to see what happens in 5 weeks, as well as everything that happens in the meantime, that you would please subscribe. For those just tuning in, welcome. Donald Trump was just found guilty on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to hush money payouts for a porn star affair he had while his wife was at home with their infant son. Can Trump now attack or get others to attack the jurors? That's a great question. I'm going to speak to that with Glenn later on today. In fact, let me make sure that I write that down because that is an excellent question to ask. Thank you. And by the way, this is a great way to field some questions. Okay. Didn't Supreme Court release a ruling on the presidential immunity case a couple of days ago? Why wasn't that breaking news? No, not yet. They're probably holding it to the end of the term because right now what Trump derives the most benefit from is a delay. As soon as the Supreme Court hands down that ruling, which presumably is going to say that a president doesn't enjoy immunity for criminal activity that goes beyond the scope of their responsibilities as president, then the D.C. prosecution can move forward. So knowing that that's likely or hopefully what the result is going to be in that case, that won't help Trump, but the delay will. Because knowing that Judge Chutkan still needs about 88 days for this trial to go forward, the longer that the Supreme Court can delay on Trump's behalf, the more benefit Donald Trump derives from that. And thank you, by the way, for people donating and stuff. I very much appreciate it. There's no obligation whatsoever to do that, but I very much appreciate it. If you do want to support me, I think the best way to do that is to pre-order my book that's coming out. It's pinned in the comments section right up here, or you can go to briantylercohen.com/book. Or you can go on Amazon. The book is called Shameless by Brian Tyler Cohen. You can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or best of all, an independent bookseller and pre-order it there. But the pre-order period is very important. Anyway, I'll stop hawking that. But I will appreciate if people are able to place those orders. Is the gag order still in place? That's a good question. I presume that now that he's no longer a criminal defendant, that he's a convicted felon, that it's not in place because now it's over. But I will ask Glenn what's going to happen in terms of if Trump tries to attack jurors or incites violence against jurors. I mean, it could be an entirely separate charge if he's inciting violence against certain people. Good question. Can I officially refer to him as a convicted felon? So I think generally, yes. Technically, we may have to wait for him to be sentenced to be a convicted felon, but I think you're okay. I think at this point, kind of let it, let your freak flag fly. Go for it. And here's the best news of all. We have a comment from Dan Bongino. If there's kids watching, cover your ears. This is Dan Bongino. He says, well, I'll make it appropriate. What an effing scam. F all these commies. Very articulate. Very articulate. And keep the tears coming. Keep the tears coming. Again, they'll all blame Joe Biden for this. Joe Biden had nothing to do with this. This prosecution wasn't even brought forward by Biden's own DOJ, which is still independent of Joe Biden. This was brought by Alvin Bragg, and it was related to hush money payouts that Joe Biden had nothing to do with. It wasn't Biden who decided to have an affair with Stormy Daniels. It wasn't Biden who decided to pay her off. It wasn't Biden who made Michael Cohen give $130,000 of his own money. It wasn't Biden who told Trump to then make Michael Cohen whole, including paying him for the taxes. It wasn't Biden who told him to write this stuff down on paper that was introduced in this trial. It wasn't Biden who did any of this. If Donald Trump is looking for who's responsible for all of this, all he has to do is pick up a mirror. This is the party of personal responsibility that has no concept of taking responsibility for their own actions. That's what it is. Anyway, to answer your question, yes, I think you're totally fine calling Donald Trump a convicted felon. Okay, so at this point, throw some last questions here, and I'll do my best to answer them. And from there, I will prep this next episode of The Legal Breakdown with Glenn. Okay, so let's see what these questions are. There are so many comments that... Okay, so this is a quick one. Does now being a convicted felon violate his gag order? No, because he didn't commit a new crime by virtue of being a convicted felon. He was held accountable for a crime that he had committed back in 2016. But he did commit a crime when he committed criminal contempt when he violated his gag order. And judges in his other cases do have a predicate to revoke his bond. Will they? Probably not. The way the Supreme Court is stacked, how quickly could they overturn the verdict? If I'm not mistaken, the Supreme Court wouldn't have any insight into, wouldn't have any ability to overturn this because this is happening in New York. But let me find out from Glenn. Good questions. These are helpful for me in terms of, and yes, Glenn and I will be doing a legal breakdown shortly. Yes, there will be an appeal for those asking about an appeal. Can we bring back... I'm not going to read that. Is the gag order still in effect? I will find out, but I don't think so. I believe that was just in effect while Donald Trump was a criminal defendant, and I don't believe he's a criminal defendant anymore. Will the other criminal cases move faster now, knowing that a former president can be charged and found guilty? Perhaps. I mean, we're still waiting for these cases to be able to move forward. Does it make it more, does it give a little bit of a permission structure to other jurors to know that they wouldn't be the first one? Probably. When these indictments were handed down, the first one happened, and the second, third, and fourth happened relatively quickly after that. Nobody wants to be the first, but once there is the first, it makes the subsequent ones all the easier. For those asking, the link to order my book, it's at the top of the comment section. You can also go to briantylercohen.com/book. Or you can go on Amazon, type in Shameless. You can go on Barnes & Noble, type in Shameless by Brian Tyler Cohen. Anybody that sells books. Your local bookseller, indie bookseller is another great option for those asking. Does Congress have any jurisdiction here? No. Can his party kick him out? Sure. Will they? No. Does this affect pretrial release in any other cases? No, this won't affect his pretrial release because this wasn't him committing a new crime. This was him being held accountable for a crime that he'd committed back in 2015, 2016. What jail will he be in? Well, that depends what happens on July 11th, whether he is sentenced to prison or whether he's sentenced to probation. All of that remains to be seen. So with that said, I have a lot of questions to ask Glenn, so keep an eye out because we're going to be doing a very important legal breakdown today. If you're not yet subscribed to this channel, please make sure to subscribe. I'm going to get all of these questions answered, including what if Trump attacks jurors? Could the Supreme Court overturn? Is he still bound by the gag order? And what happens in this pre-sentencing period, and why do we have to wait so long? Also, what he's thinking in terms of the likelihood that Trump will be incarcerated versus the likelihood that he'll be let off with a slap on the wrist, like a probationary period. So all of that remains to be seen. One last pitch. If you want to support this stream, I will never ask for money or anything like that, but one thing that would definitely help me is if you pre-ordered my book. It's called Shameless. It's available for pre-order on all the big sites, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Also, if you have an indie bookstore that you want to support, you can just go on the indie bookstore website and just pre-order it there. That's a great way to support independent booksellers. And you can also find it on briantylercohen.com/book, singular book. Okay, with that said, thank you all for watching. Holy shit. Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 counts. He is a convicted felon. The justice system worked exactly as it was supposed to. It only took a day and a half for the jury to come to a verdict, and they came to the right verdict. So a good day for democracy, a good day for accountability, a good day for everybody. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. This is huge news. I'm really happy and grateful to have been a small part of it for you today. And let's keep going. We have a lot more work to do. All right. Thanks, everybody.